The microphone slipped from Steve Harvey's hand, hitting the studio floor with a metallic echo that seemed to freeze time itself. In 40 years of television, he had never been rendered completely speechless. But the man standing at the Family Feud podium had just shared something that transcended game shows, transcended entertainment, transcended everything Steve thought he knew about courage. Michael Chen, 42 years old, stood with quiet dignity in his navy blue sweater, his once athletic frame now noticeably thinner. Behind his gentle smile and calm demeanor lay a truth that would shatter every heart in that studio. He was dying, and he knew it. It was supposed to be a routine Tuesday taping at the Family Feud studios in Los Angeles. The energy was electric, as always, with two families facing off under the bright lights. The Chen family from Sacramento versus the Rodriguez family from Phoenix. Standard setup, standard questions, standard laughs. Steve was in his element, working the crowd with his signature blend of humor and warmth, his perfectly tailored charcoal suit reflecting the studio lights. The Chen family had been selected after months of auditions. Michael's wife Sarah, their twin daughters Amy and Lisa, both 21 and home from college, and Michael's brother David had all come to support the family patriarch. What the audience didn't know, what the producers didn't know, was the real reason they were there. 3 weeks earlier, Michael had received the call that changes everything. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Advanced. Aggressive. The oncologist had spoken in careful, measured tones about treatment options, about managing pain, about making the most of the time remaining. 3 to 4 weeks. Maybe 6 if they were fortunate. Michael had sat in that sterile hospital room, holding Sarah's hand as she wept, and made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He wanted to spend his final days not in despair, but in joy. He wanted to give his family one perfect memory, and somehow, inexplicably, he wanted to meet Steve Harvey. For 15 years, Michael had watched Family Feud religiously. Through his engineering career, through raising his daughters, through every challenge life had thrown at him, Steve Harvey's laughter had been the soundtrack to his family's dinner routine. There was something about Steve's authenticity, his ability to find joy in the simplest moments, that had always resonated with Michael. The game progressed normally at first. The Chen family was competitive, their teamwork solid. Michael surprised everyone with his quick wit and steady presence under pressure. Steve noticed something special about him immediately. There was a calmness, a centeredness that was unusual for contestants who were typically nervous or overwhelmed by the bright lights and cameras. During the second round, when asked to name something people do when they're grateful, Michael had quietly answered, "Tell the people they love how much they matter." It wasn't on the board, but something about the way he said it made Steve pause longer than usual before moving on. It was during the fast money round that everything changed. Michael's family had won the right to play for the $20,000 prize. Sarah, his wife of 22 years, had gone first, scoring a respectable 42 points. Michael needed just 58 more points to secure victory. Steve approached the podium with his usual energy. "Michael, you need 58 points to win $20,000 for your family. You ready, my man?" Michael nodded, but Steve noticed his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the podium. Not from nerves. Steve had seen nervous contestants for decades. This was something deeper, something that made Steve's instincts kick in. "You okay, brother?" Steve asked, stepping closer. Michael looked up, and for the first time since the cameras started rolling, his composed facade cracked slightly. "Steve," he said quietly, "can I tell you something before we start?" The studio audience was buzzing with anticipation, unaware that they were about to witness something unprecedented. Steve glanced at the producers in the booth, every instinct telling him to maintain the show's pace. Instead, he made a choice that would define not just that episode, but his entire understanding of what television could be. "Talk to me," Steve said, setting his cards aside. Michael took a deep breath, his voice steady but weighted with emotion. "I'm dying, Steve. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave me 3 weeks. Maybe 4. The studio fell silent so quickly, you could hear the hum of the overhead lights. "My family doesn't know I asked the doctors for the exact timeline. I didn't want to worry them more than they already are." Steve's expression changed completely. The entertainer, the comedian, the television host, all of it fell away, leaving just a man looking at another man who was facing the unthinkable. "Michael," Steve said softly, his voice barely audible to the studio audience, but picked up clearly by his wireless microphone. "I need to say something to my family," Michael continued, his voice growing stronger. "On television, where it's permanent, where they can watch it whenever they need to remember. I applied for this show 6 months ago, before we knew. But when we got the call, I realized this was meant to happen. This was my chance to leave them something." Steve Harvey had hosted thousands of hours of television. He'd seen every possible situation a game show could throw at him. But this was uncharted territory. This was a man using his final days, not for self-pity, but for love. "What do you want to say?" Steve asked, his own voice now thick with emotion. Michael turned to face his family, still standing at their podium, watching with growing concern. The cameras followed his gaze, capturing Sarah's face as understanding began to dawn, the twins' expressions shifting from confusion to heartbreak. "Sarah," Michael said, his voice carrying across the silent studio, "you've been the love of my life for 22 years. You made every day better just by being in it." "Amy, Lisa," his voice caught slightly as he looked at his daughters. "You've been my pride and joy. Every sacrifice, every long day at work, every moment of worry was worth it because I got to be your dad." The audience was completely silent now. Several people in the front row were openly crying. Even the camera operators, who had seen hundreds of tapings, found themselves wiping their eyes. "I need you to know," Michael continued, "that I'm not afraid. I'm not angry. I'm grateful. Grateful for every day, every laugh, every ordinary Tuesday night watching Family Feud together." He paused, looking directly into the main camera. "And I need you to promise me something. When I'm gone, keep watching together. Keep laughing together. Keep being the amazing family you are." Steve Harvey, the man who had built a career on perfect timing and quick wit, was completely silent. Tears streamed down his face as he stood witness to the most profound moment of television he'd ever experienced. But Michael wasn't finished. He turned back to Steve. "And Steve, I need to thank you. For 15 years, you've been in our living room. You've made us laugh when we needed it most. You've shown us that joy is always possible, even in the hardest times. That's why I needed to be here, needed to meet you, needed to say this while you're listening." Without consulting producers, without following any protocol, Steve Harvey walked around the podium and embraced Michael. It wasn't a quick camera-friendly hug. It was the embrace of two men sharing a moment that transcended television, transcended entertainment, transcended everything except pure human connection. "Brother," Steve said, his voice breaking, "you just taught everyone in this studio, everyone watching at home, what real courage looks like, what real love looks like." The studio erupted then, not in typical game show applause, but in the kind of response that happens when people witness something sacred. The Rodriguez family, their competitors, left their podium and joined the embrace. The audience rose as one, not because they were cued to, but because they couldn't stay seated. Steve released Michael and turned to address the studio. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying a gravity that transformed the space, "we're going to do something different today. We're going to honor this man's request. We're going to make sure his family knows how much they're loved." He handed his microphone to Michael. "Take all the time you need, brother. This is your moment." What followed was the most powerful television ever recorded. Michael spoke for 10 minutes straight, sharing memories, expressing gratitude, telling his daughters about the men he hoped they'd marry, telling his wife about the life he wanted her to build after he was gone. The cameras captured every word, every tear, every moment of a man choosing love over fear in the face of death. When Michael finally finished, Steve took back the microphone and made an announcement that broke every rule of television production. Michael Chen, you and your family are winners today. Not because of points, not because of money, but because you've shown us what really matters. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his personal business card. This has my direct number, not my manager, not my assistant. Me. Your family calls anytime, day or night, and I'll answer. That's a promise. The episode, when it finally aired 8 weeks later, became the highest-rated Family Feud episode in history. But more importantly, it raised over $5 million for pancreatic cancer research. Michael's final message had reached millions of viewers, inspiring countless families to have conversations they'd been putting off, to express love they'd assumed could wait. Michael Chen passed away peacefully, 6 weeks after the taping, surrounded by his family. His final words, according to Sarah, were, "Tell Steve thank you." But the story doesn't end there. At Michael's memorial service, Steve Harvey delivered the eulogy, not as a celebrity, but as a friend. He spoke about courage, about the difference between existing and living, about how Michael had taught him that real strength isn't about fighting death, but about embracing life fully while you still can. The Chen family still gathers every Tuesday night to watch Family Feud. It's their ritual, their way of keeping Michael's presence alive in their living room. Sarah often catches herself laughing at Steve's jokes and whispering, "Michael would have loved that one." Amy and Lisa, now successful in their own careers, have both become advocates for pancreatic cancer awareness. They speak at medical conferences, sharing their father's story, using the platform he gave them to help other families facing similar battles. The microphone that had fallen to the studio floor that day was later engraved with Michael's name and now sits in Steve Harvey's office. But its real power isn't in what it represents. It's in what it started. Steve began ending every Family Feud episode with a simple message. Tell the people you love how much they matter. Don't wait for tomorrow. The episode sparked a movement. Tell Them Today became a viral hashtag, with families sharing videos of long overdue conversations, of forgiveness finally offered, of love finally expressed. Medical professionals reported an increase in families seeking honest conversations about terminal diagnoses, choosing hope and connection over denial and fear. Steve Harvey often says that Michael taught him the difference between hosting a show and serving a purpose. That day, I learned that my job isn't to entertain people for 30 minutes, he reflects. My job is to create moments where people can be their truest selves, where love can be expressed without shame, where courage can inspire others to find their own. The business card Steve gave Michael's family has been used more than once. Sarah called on Michael's birthday, not because she was sad, but because she wanted to share a memory. The twins called when they graduated medical school, knowing their father would have been proud. Each time, Steve answered, keeping his promise, proving that some connections transcend television, transcend fame, transcend everything except love itself. Because that's what Michael's final message really was. Not a goodbye, but a reminder that love is what makes life worth living, even when life is ending. Especially then.